Jaylen Brunson had 47 points, which is the most playoff points in the history of the Knicks. He officially moved into 1984 Bernard territory, which is hallowed ground, especially for the Knicks fans over age like 46. Because 1984 Bernard, if you go back and you look at the greatest Knicks playoff performances ever, points-wise, he had 6 of the top 13. He won all 3 home games against the 84 Celtics and put up 40-plus every game against McHale and Maxwell and Robert Parrish and Bird, and just single-handedly dragged that team to the 7th game. So when you say hallowed ground, this is really hallowed ground. And Brunson was 18 for 34. It looked like he got hurt a couple times. They're throwing everything at him. I think every guy in the Sixers guarded him at some point, and he just literally wouldn't let the Knicks lose. He scores 47. They score 97 for the entire game. Bogdanovich gets hurt. He plays 1 minute. Mitchell Robinson scratched for the game. Hartenstein, 5th foul, maybe near the end of the 3rd quarter, beginning of the 4th quarter, never seen again. And this team had no scoring other than OG made a couple. Josh Hart was 0 for 7, but had 17 rebounds. The Knicks were 7 for 27 from 3. And they somehow win the game, and this becomes the Brunson game. And yet, Russillo, I wonder if it's a little bit of the Embiid game too.
It's definitely going to be another piece of the Embiid game, but I think you have to start with Brunson because, it wasn't a great start the first 2 games. Clearly, Philly was smart in selling out on him defensively. It looked like length bothered him. Oubre, who I did not think I would ever be talking about playoff defensive stopper, but he's playing his ass off. For the most part, Oubre has been a revelation for this team. I mean, imagine if they didn't have him the beginning of the year. You're like, all right, cool. Like he'll make some threes and he'll have some, but he's been really steady and he's been super engaged throughout it all. But you just figured Brunson, with his style, his footwork, with his herky-jerkiness, slow, fast, stop, quick, all these different things that he throws at you that maybe you would figure it out. I thought they did a really good job. I thought he was more prepared for it in game 3, and I thought they did a really good job of getting Oubre off of him, where it felt like there was way more. Like it looked like Harris was the primary matchup that he wanted more. He got Maxey a few times. I think Batum's had some good moments against him defensively. But, Hart didn't want to shoot threes today. DiVincenzo struggled here, even though he got a couple back-to-back there in that spurt. But you could just see, like, it's so hard for what Brunson has to do, where even when they get all these offensive rebounds, they're just waiting to give the ball back to Brunson. Do you know how hard that is when you're big? And here's this guy that may not even be 6 feet. And you're like, hey, go figure it out. The shot clock, no, the one he hit against Embiid, where he had it late and it looked like 3 seconds left on the shot clock, like he had, and then he goes left to right. Oh, when he did, like he went left to right and it seemed like he took 8 steps, but he didn't. It was actually in control. I just kept waiting. I'm like, when is he going to get the shot off? When is he going to get the shot off? Of course, he's got the shot clock in front of him, so he knows when to shoot it. That shot was absurd. I had said this week that I think Paolo has the toughest job of any number 1 scoring option of any of the teams in the playoffs. Because they don't have a number 2 or number 3 scoring option? Well, Franz can be a 2, and Franz was great. At home if he's feeling it. Yeah, he was great in game 4. Right, it's great. But you could just, they're dominating the offensive glass. They're getting offensive rebounds on 40% of their misses. All right, they were to do that for the playoffs, to be the highest offensive rebound rate of any team in the playoffs in 10 years. And that's what they're doing to the Sixers right now. There's a couple reasons why it's happening. Plus 25 for the series in offensive rebounds. But as soon as they get it, they're looking for him. Like Precious can't make a layup to save his life. I mean, it's starting to get a little ugly. Hart Hart, every team should want Josh Hart. Every team should want him because even if he's not making shots, he's just flying all over the place and keeping these possessions alive. But it's just filtered right back to him. OG had a few moments today that were terrific offensively. We'll get to his defense a little bit later. But Brunson continues to destroy I don't know who has limitations on him anymore. Even if I think against a really good team, I'll probably talk myself back into, is it going to be even harder for him if a team is defending him? Yeah, it would seem like it would be like a team like the Celtics that just could throw guards combined with 6'8", 6'9" guys. And it's just a steady diet of that would be the answer to slow them down. But, Philly was trying a version of that today. It wouldn't work. What you're laying out reminded me of when there's that awesome high school basketball team that has the one great guy.
and it could be a women's team or a men's team, but they have one person and then a bunch of people setting picks and just that one person trying to get shots off. And you're like, man, it's amazing. What a burden. And now this is happening at the NBA level. Like usually DiVincenzo sometimes can help out a little bit and but I don't even think he was out there in crunch time for them. The big picture thing with him though, like I went back and I looked at all his Dallas games. How many 30-point regular season games do you think he had in 4 years in Dallas where he scored 30 points? 4 years, 4 seasons in Dallas.
5 of them?
3. And then he had 3 in the 2022 playoffs where he had that 41-point game against Utah. I think we did a pod after that. And then he had 2 31-pointers, and that's it. So he scored, for when he was at Dallas, he scored 30-plus points 6 times total, including the playoffs. And now he's turned into Bernard King. And I remember you and I both really liked the signing when it happened, and we thought it was a good price.
I don't know that we liked it. I'm going to speak for myself. I was like, I always talk
liked
about
it though. We thought he could be like the third, maybe
I didn't think he was going to
second best guy on a really good playoff team.
Third. Yeah, there's never a moment where I thought it would be anything approaching. Hell, even a lesser version of this, I didn't think this is what he was going to be.
What was the evidence that there was no evidence that this could ever happen? And
I still liked him, but I remember when you looked at his game from, like, there was the first postseason where he just wasn't very good.
It was the year before his last Dallas year. Yeah, he had I think that was why he didn't get the extension.
And so there's just a lot of young players that they'll have this bad opening. You're always good on this, but you go back and like look at some of the really good players, not all of them, but you just go, oh my God, what happened in that series? Or the guy doesn't look like he's comfortable or anything. And then it kind of becomes who they are for like another year. So I was past that. But if you're telling me when they signed him, I remember specifically saying like, hey, it's a lot of money, guys, puts up some numbers, but I don't know that he's going to be your one option in leading your team. And with the Knicks and the fan base and then not getting in that superstar where their expectations of him be too high and then they're going to be disappointed. Well, guess what? All of it's wrong because he's insane.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, now he has been saddled by what Perk said after the game when Perk called it the greatest playoff performance in Knicks history. And 5 minutes later, Clyde Frazier was found dead. I'm kidding.
Oh, I was going to say, I don't want to say anything if he's really dead.
Perk didn't know about Game 7, 1970 Finals, one of the 3 greatest player performances in the history of the league, which happened when Clyde was wearing a Knicks uniform. But
I'd love to see Perk on CNBC.
Where he would just stuff out?
Yeah. He'd be like, man, although, look, it's not that far off from other people that have had.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I think we are seeing Perk on CNBC. So OG played 47 minutes. You mentioned him. Put up a 16 and 14 and really defended Embiid. I thought that was the best they did against him. Now, Embiid has all of these numbers. He was 0 for 5 in the fourth quarter. In their 3 losses, he's 2 for 16 field goals fourth quarter. Unfortunately for them, they're minus 37 when he sits. So Nick Nurse was like, I'm just going to play him the whole second half. Huge mistake. Big mistake. And this goes back to the joke I made to you a week ago. Maybe just play Embiid in the second half might be the answer to all of this. But Embiid was bad. He passed up that 17-footer with like 25 seconds left so he could kind of just barrel to the rim and throw it off the backboard. And in general has just been over and over again really subpar in these playoff games. And he's now replaced. I think James Harden actually gave him the trophy of most disappointing playoff performer. I think Embiid is now wearing the crown.
Not sure I'm there yet. Feels a little like recency bias.
Recency like the last 6 years of playoff games?
I'm not telling you he's been the guy, but it was the first thing I was looking at because when you looked at the start of the fourth quarter and you knew Brunson was going to be out, and so we're looking at a 77-76 New York game here, and I thought Tibbs also did a great job of calling a timeout there early to give Brunson extra time, extra real time.
Yep.
So he brought Brunson in at 9:35, and I don't know. I didn't hear Nick's press conference because I watched the next game. I'm just trying to think of what they were thinking of, and he might have thought, hey, if I can keep Embiid in now and get up 5 points with Brunson out, which is kind of what the math had shown with the on-off of both of those guys and for their teams, like maybe he's thinking that's the most important. It's like the 7th innings is actually the most important with 2 guys on as opposed to a clean 9.
He went modern bullpen analytics. I like it. I think it was insane. I thought it was the dumbest thing any coach did all series.
You think it's that bad? Okay.
There's just an incredible track record of him getting worse as playoff games go along, culminating in him stinking in fourth quarters. And Nick Nurse is like, I wonder if I could flip this by just never taking him out. Maybe he'll seem more exhausted and that will make him actually play well. But it was really bad. And then, after the game, Embiid was complaining about the fans and how there are so many Knicks fans at the game. And it's like, that definitely don't do that. It's just, this is 10 years. Mike Lombardi does a great job of talking about this, but this is 10 years of a team that has had no organizational accountability, right? It's like losses don't matter. Just let's throw away seasons, try to get draft picks. Let's make excuses for everybody. Let's blame this person. Let's blame that person. And then today it was the fans because you had too many New York fans there. That's why you guys lost. Why are you even bringing that up? Like, just fall on the sword every once in a while and say, you know what? I consider myself the best player in the league. And I didn't play well enough today. And I got outplayed by the other guy on the other team. And I got to do better. But I've never heard Embiid say anything like that.
No, but he's had, whether it's Morey or other people close to him, we've brought this up before. I don't know if they've convinced him that everyone's out to get him, whether it was the MVP stuff in the past. And then, of course, Embiid's leading the playoffs in free throw attempts. He's like 5-6 more than any other player in the playoffs going into today's games. And in the unofficial count of, I can't believe he got this call.
Right. I think he's leading in that category too.
He gets fouled all the time because he's so gifted and it's so hard to deal with. And Hartenstein, on 2 of the fouls, you're like, hey, that's on you, man. Stop letting your arms get in there.
Right. Don't touch him.
But for them to then point to the officiating again, which felt like Houston 2018 redo, when you're like, hey, make a fucking 3. All right. When I was doing my Embiid tracker, which I know you love, because there was that moment there, like around when Brunson comes back in, I just kept track of all the Embiid possessions,
Yeah.
Embiid jumper miss, then an air ball. And then they didn't do him any favors, but in this position, he was in that Harden off the ball while Chris Paul dribbles, Houston 2018 again, where he just was taking himself entirely out of the play, and he still ended up with the ball, which was, I don't even think that wasn't on him. And then he's going to shoot some grenade 3. With under a minute left, he gets the desperation free throws. Then you mentioned him passing up the open jumper in the drive. At that point, the game was probably over. But I thought the most important 2 things that were happening, were that they were fronting him with OG once they decided to take Hartenstein out. And you're watching that going, so the Knicks are going to go small here, but they don't want Precious on him because Precious is going to foul him 20 times.
Yeah.
And OG worked his ass off on just preventing the easy entry passes. I also don't like with Embiid where they try to set him up on the sides. I think that's one of the best things that Doc did with him is they get him to the middle and let him work from the middle because they're not right. You're not overloaded where it feels like half the court is cut off from you and you can operate in 2 different ways. So they got away from that. And then that double that I always want to see teams do to Embiid because I've seen him have a problem with it through his whole playoff career. And I'm wondering when it's going to happen. And obviously, Tibbs, you're going, this guy's brilliant. Like, how come he's not doubling a little bit more? How come he's not doubling a little bit more? Van Gundy even talked about it. Stan, which I completely agreed with. He goes, with Embiid and the doubles, you got to be smart about it because if you double to him early, you get it to him too early. He's such a great passer. He's going to burn you. You've got to let him make you've got to let him maybe even double on the dribble. And all the stuff that Stan was talking about, it's like Tibbs saved it for this moment and was like, I didn't expect to be stuck with OG, but since we are now, let's double him the way we've seen him struggle with it in the past. And the funny thing is they doubled off of Maxey 3 times, and twice Maxey had wide open looks because then you're like, all right, Maxey has to stay on the same side of the court with him to try to take advantage of this double. And then Maxey misses those 2 shots, which is not Embiid's fault. The problem is the total fourth quarter, whether you look at the numbers or watch the actual game part of it, you're like, here we are again. Do you think the 3 minutes of rest or 4 minutes of rest, like the second half thing you've said is funny? I don't know. Like, it might be about keeping him. It might be playing him 30 minutes. Because on top of that, they can't get a defensive rebound.
Well, so that you did a great job of breaking down all the offensive stuff and all the stuff Tibbs did. The other piece of this is the rebounding and the fact that this is the biggest guy in the game by far when Hartenstein's out. By far. He's 6 inches taller than everyone else in the game. And they over and over again got offensive rebounds and were able to attack the rim, and just kind of made him look like kind of Dikembe Mutombo near the end when he was like going against Shaq that year when he was still tall and still had size, but just seemed a step slow for anybody. This was always the piece with Embiid that I think that people were never critical enough when they always talked about what an incredible defensive player he is. And I do, there's that piece, and a lot of the tall guys have it, the fear when you're going into the paint around, you're seeing him, you're thinking about him. But to me, rebounding is part of defense. And if you can't protect the defensive boards, that's part of your job, especially when you're the tallest guy by 7 inches. That was the reason they lost this game. They lost the game because they couldn't get rebounds. And the Knicks kept getting these second chances over and over and over again. And that's how they steal a game on the road that they had no business winning. Even with the Brunson game, they shouldn't have won this game. The other piece that the Sixers need to figure out is Maxey, most improved player, even though I feel like he's 95% what he was last year. How do you unleash him at the end of games? Like they were doing such a good job, and we wrote about in The Ringer about hunting Brunson and trying to make him defend. One of the best ways to stop him on offense is to make him work on defense. They kind of stopped doing that too. I just thought it was a genuinely bad Nick Nurse game. I didn't understand a lot of the stuff they were doing. And, if you're getting out rebounded and you're getting beat by the same play over and over again, maybe try to fix it. Brunson was 18 for 34. That's fucking nuts. He was the only guy on the team who was trying to score.
Yeah, I thought some of the trapping stuff they did was really good, and then Hart made a bunch of shots. I mean, Hart was hitting 4+ threes, or at least 4 threes in each of the first 3 games. So I don't know if they went back, because after game 1, I went, you know what? You're not going to like the result, but I liked some of the stuff they did. They were extending kind of the zone trap on him. They were getting the ball out of his hands, but Hart hits 3, including that ridiculous one. OG, I think, had 1 late. And if you're the Sixer staff, you're like, everything we wanted to have happen. It's just they made every single shot. But Maxey is probably better with a little bit more freedom, and I think this game gets slowed down so much in these intense moments. And I think it's the second slowest pace series of any of the playoff series.
Which is what the Knicks want. This is how they played all year. They go super slow.
Other than Maxey missing those shots off the double team, I don't really have any Maxey critiques, because I just think when I watch him,
critique is maybe they need him more than they're letting on in these series. Because if Embiid is just going to disappear in every fourth quarter, maybe you got to figure out something for the fourth quarter that's not relying on Embiid to come through. Because now we have a pretty good body of evidence here. Can I read you a text from a frustrated anonymous Philly friend of mine? Not going to name him.
Okay.
I asked him. I texted him, just a shockingly low amount of Sixers text from you this spring about this round.
You sent that to him today, huh?
I sent him after the game. I was like, I'm just surprised. Usually you vent to me about the Sixers. And he said, really? Just read the text from Boston last year versus Heat the year before versus Atlanta year before that. Same shit. I prefer to text with people who are as miserable as I am, as opposed to people who have a good team with a legit shot. I think we have pretty near unanimity now in my sphere to blow it up. Nurse had no answers. Embiid had no energy. Maxey looked like a deer in headlights. And Toby might be the least productive performer per dollar in the history of the league. This is Waterloo. I cry uncle. Let's see what we can get for the big guy and make him someone else's problem. Just a friend of mine.
Will it be different?
By the way,
will it be a different tone?
Did you know Tobias Harris played in that game? He was in the game today. Yeah, they just got him.
Yeah.
He played all 4 quarters, apparently.
I was excited about aggressive Tobias Harris before. I can't understand. Somebody just needs to go, do you realize how big and athletic you are? Because he had a couple drives in the first half where I went, whoa. Like he had one drive where I'm thinking, like, this is what it's supposed to be like. You're almost as big as Luka, for Christ's sakes. Like, you have handle, you have quickness. But what are we asking? We're asking for this to continue. They bring in DeAnthony Melton. Hield is on the shelf now with this whole thing. I can nitpick anything you want there with Maxey, but when Embiid is that shot at the end, whether it's the knee, whether it's the Bell's palsy, it's a litany of things that he's dealing with. There was that play where Brunson hit the layup late when they were trying to run a little clock, and Embiid had him, and then Brunson kind of reset.
Yeah.
Right, and then Embiid ran to the baseline to close out on fucking Precious Achua. And then Brunson just, like, I had to rewatch it going, wait, how did he just get so open? And then I'm like, well, that's a tired decision. That's an exhausted person making a decision going, all right, let me just make sure I cover the baseline here. And you're like, no, the guy with 40 is now wide open in the paint.
Well, if there had just been like 4,000 more Philly fans at the game, maybe he makes the right play.
It is loud in there. It is pretty alarming, especially for a place like Philly. That's not supposed to happen in Philly.
It's less than 2 hours from New York.
Philly. You know how
and your
pissed you would
secondary
be?
market? Oh, my God. Well, but it's secondary market. Anyone can get tickets.
Okay, but if you were at a Celtics game,
I'd fucking be out of my mind. I'd be so upset.
Do you think it'll happen?
What?
Oh, well, if it's
Knicks?
Eastern Conference Finals, yeah. I mean,
nah.
Still a lot of work to do.
Still a lot of work to do.
That's the other thing for Philly that's so frustrating about this. And maybe Embiid just wasn't going to be right throughout these entire playoffs. But to your point, it looks a little bit too much like the other ones. But when you look at the rest of the East, other than Boston, and for all the PTSD everybody had about Boston and Miami after game 2,
yeah.
But with this Milwaukee thing falling apart, this is cool from the Pacers to show some life. But defensively, nobody's going to be afraid of them. This is the part where Philly's like, if we had just been whole, but then I don't think.
All right, but how do you explain Embiid scoring 50 points in game 3? Like, I just don't know when we turn the excuse button on or off for this one, because if I'm a Philly fan, I'm like, well, Embiid's not healthy. It's like, but he had 50 points in game 3, so has to be like pretty healthy.
21 free throws help.
Yeah, no, I get it.
But no, you know what though? I can't say you're wrong. I don't present that to you like, hey, you're wrong.
No, I'm not mad at you. I'm just saying in general, like you have to pick and choose. Either
this
Embiid's
wasn't
healthy or he's
Kawhi
not.
game 3 into today.
No.
Right.
No, either Embiid's healthy or he's not. He was certainly really healthy in game 3. He talked a bunch of shit after game 2. And then in game 4, he completely disappeared.
I thought he was,
and that's just the reality of the situation.
Yeah. Like, I didn't have a problem with him not being tossed with the Mitchell Robinson thing. It just sucks that his ankle was turned. But then he decided to just knee the hell out of Hartenstein, and I thought they missed it on the broadcast. The OG screen where he sticked his ass out and knocked him down, that doesn't bother me at all. Like, they didn't catch it, so whatever. But he was certainly worked up. And then he got into it with Brunson today, where that was so silly, because then he and Brunson had to have a conference about it. Just kept going on and on and on.
Well, he kind of cheap-shotted him, though.
Yeah, but that one I don't have any issue with, because it's a little guy. What do the old guys tell us all the time? Little guy wants to come in there and mess around. I'm going to remind you that you're not supposed to be down here. And it was a really good forearm shiver. So I'm sure you don't love it if you're a Brunson fan. I didn't have that big of an issue with it. Yeah, but when Embiid was going, like, what are you talking about? They were talking at the free throw line. They talked at the other stoppage. They talked at midcourt while the free throws are happening. And I'm watching it and I'm going, I wonder if Embiid actually doesn't know what happened on that one. The other ones, I think he knew what he was doing. But this one, I was like, he may have just been like somebody coming through
confused.
the lane.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you this. Incredible heel turn by him. Knicks fans hate him. All the Knicks fans in my life are like, I fucking hate this guy. Shoot him to the sun. There's not a Knicks fan in the earth who likes Joel Embiid anymore. It would be funny if they traded for him this summer and they'd be like, no, I always liked him. But he's really kind of leaned into his inner villain.